Okay. Larry, you got the recording going?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. This is the thing I have to read at the beginning of the meeting. This meeting of the Noank Zoning Commission will take place through remote meeting technology. My name is Rick Smith, Chairman of the Commission. The host of the Zoom meeting is Larry Dunn, who's an alternate Zoning Commission member. The participants in this meeting will be Commission members, selected alternates, staff, and perhaps the Commission's counsel. Anyone speaking should state their names prior to speaking each time they speak. I forget that all the time. I apologize. Participants who would like to comment on an item or an item should indicate such by using the raise hand icon at the bottom of the screen or by raising your hand in front of your screen. After the raised hand has been detected, the participant will have the opportunity to speak after being called upon by the chairman. Participants should mute their microphones until called upon. Procedurally, to offer a motion or second a motion, commissioners should physically raise their hand and be acknowledged by the chairman. To vote on a motion, commissioners will be called upon individually by the chair. Members of the public who have logged on or called in will be observing the meeting, but there will be no public comment other than in that small part of the agenda for non-agenda items. All participants must identify themselves before speaking each time they speak. Members of the public can submit comments in writing to the commissioner after the meeting for consideration on any item discussed. Finally, a recording of tonight's meeting will be posted on the Town of Groton's website within 7 days of the meeting. Okay, it was 7:01 as we called to order. Members, please identify yourself.
Steele.
Tanner, member.
Okay, Dana.
Dana Oviatt.
Okay, those are 3 seated members. Lynn Marshall is an alternate. She is seated for Blake Powell, who is absent. We also have alternate Larry Dunn and myself. There is no public hearing scheduled for tonight. We're trying to get the public hearing for the solar panel language to be on the July agenda. I have to talk to Bill again about whether that's true. General comments for issues not on the agenda. I don't see that anyone has joined other than us, so there'll be no public general comment right now. We have no applications. So we'll go right to reports. This has zoning enforcement officer report. It's in your package and it was posted on the website. So if you look down toward the tail end, just before the goals and objectives, you'll see that what Bill and Jen did was to consolidate the 3 reports from March through May in one report. So you can read down through there. Since we don't have Bill, if I can't answer the questions will have to be held for later, but he usually reads this into the record, so I'll read it in his absence. 2020-26, John Wilbur, 26 Pearl Street, replace bay window like for like. 2020-27, Thomas Shimenti, 60 Seneca Drive, new shed. 2028, Blake Powell, 106 Pearl Street, replace kitchen window like for like. 2020-29, Frederick Fisher, 26 Main Street, propane tank. 2020-30, John Henderson, 24 Crosswinds Drive, re-roof. 2020-31, Penelope Fox, 221 Elm Street, ductless heating system. 2020-32, David Blacker, 51 Main Street, replace shed. Larry, could you admit that? You got him. Okay, thank you.
I got him.
That was Barbara Leonard, 50 Mumford Cove Road, remodel construction. 2020-34, Kirk and Diane Daniels, 169 Seneca Drive, install heat pump. 20-35, David Thompson, 5 Pearl Street, re-roof like for like asphalt. 2020-36, Timothy Corcoran, 79 Noble Avenue, re-shingle like for like. There were no enforcement actions taken this month, and there are no information items for the commissioner. Sincerely, William Mulholland, CEO. Any questions on that report? Okay, seeing none without objection, we'll call it approved and move to the minutes. Starts with the April 21st meeting. These came to you, actually, the first three came to you before last meeting. But we postponed them to this meeting, and then Jen sent them out again last week. So you've had the first three of these for a while. So I'll just ask, are there questions on the minutes? First, April 21st. Okay, seeing none. Minutes of May 2nd. Okay, the only thing I noted is on page 1, where we're discussion of the draft decision document, brainstorming other approaches. We said continue working with the current draft, considering a straw man. And I would add in there, because we talked about this almost every time we do it, add in parentheses, as a preliminary draft not subject to public disclosure. Just so every time the public sees mention of a draft decision document and say, where is it? We can say, well, it's a staff draft, it's not released yet. Is there any objection to that change, addition? Okay, seeing none. Any other comments on the May 2nd minutes? Okay, seeing none. Next one is May 16th. Any comments on May 16th? Hey, I don't see any. I have none.
Rick,
Yep. Yep.
this is Nip. Under the goals and objectives, the fourth bullet, a motion to prioritize the goals failed 2-3 with majority noting that the goals should be weighted equally. I understood the motion to prioritize the goals at that time did not succeed. I did not understand it to be a permanent decision that the goals would be weighted equally.
I think majority noting that is not influential on us. It's just that's what people were saying. It doesn't mean we can't resurrect this issue, in my view. I mean, everything we vote for, as far as I'm concerned, if a better argument comes up to do something differently, I'm not against bringing anything back to the table. I didn't see that sentence as locking us into a majority. Well, it says majority, but locking us in as the motion does, and the motion can be changed by a subsequent motion. So does that ease your concern?
Not really.
Okay.
It appears that the way it's written, it appears that the majority have made a decision. And if that's the case, that's fine. I didn't understand it to be the case at the time.
Okay, how would you change that?
It's just a motion to prioritize the goals failed, period.
Okay. Any objection to that? Seeing none, we'll strike after the parenthetical, strike the words with the majority noting that the goals should be weighted equally. Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. So, okay. Any other comments on May 16th? Okay, seeing none. May 26th. Okay, I have I have an addition. I'm sure we said it, but I didn't realize we didn't have it in there as we looked at the draft. After the sentence that says, this is in Ram Island Yacht Club, it says Commissioners Tanner, Powell, and Oviatt recused. We need to add alternate Lynn Marshall was seated for Commissioner Tanner. Okay, then on page 2, under further discussion of STRs, okay, at the end of the sentence, discussion postponed to a future meeting, I would add, since the document had not been posted to the website. I think we were prepared, Dana had submitted that, but we didn't get it in time, and he pointed out on the record that that was, he knew we couldn't talk about the document that night, but it was because we hadn't been able to post it to the website. Of course, that's a requirement of the governor's allowance of remote meetings. So is there any objection to adding, since the document had not been posted to the website?
Where is that exactly?
It's towards the bottom of page 2, there's a bold-faced title line, further discussion of STR issues. And then it says discussion of alternative statement of purpose language. Discussion
Yep.
postponed to a future meeting.
Gotcha. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, any objection to adding that?
Yeah, I'm
Dana?
confused because I thought May was the last meeting, correct? Or second to last?
May 26th was, that's a good catch. Is that,
I'm just curious
we
because my understanding
haven't seen
was,
your, we haven't seen your statement up on the screen yet, have we? I don't think so. Lynn at that meeting was charged with trying to merge things, and then we're going to debate it all tonight.
yeah, no, I understand that, but my document was ready to go at that point. You asked for discussion on my document. Lynn had some objections. She wanted to fit the other language in that we had discussed a month or two ago. There was no other discussion on it, and you had assigned her the task of merging and rewriting. That's what my memory was.
Okay, so I'm still unclear whether we ever had that up on the screen. That's the addition I'm suggesting, is because I didn't think we did, but do I have that wrong?
I don't think we had it up on the screen.
Right, okay. So the suggestion I'm adding is okay, but what you're suggesting is more language that says what we intended to do since that meeting. Is that right?
I'm just trying to get clarification about what was actually happening.
Okay, we had postponed because we couldn't talk about your idea as a document. Okay, and what we said was we had it, but I couldn't put it up on the screen because we hadn't gotten it in time to put it up there. And then we had the discussion about, because all of the three, well, the two approaches, yours and the one we had talked about on May 2nd, had a lot of similarities. We said, well, maybe we can have somebody consolidate these, and that's what Lynn volunteered to do. Does that clear it up any? So she did that, and she has submitted that, and we were going to debate that all tonight. That's why I put all three versions up on the supporting material for the meeting.
I'll go with that.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So any other comments on the May 26th meeting? Seeing none, are you agreeable to accepting all 4 sets of minutes without objection with the changes we've noted, or would you prefer a motion? Okay, then without objection, we'll approve them with the notations. Jen, are you, have you kept track of these?
Yep, there's one I'm going to ask you about later,
Okay.
but otherwise
Clarification or influential? In other words, should everybody else hear it? Or is it
no, because you must have it written down because you've read it.
Okay. Oh, the language. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So without objection, the 4 sets of minutes from April through the end of May are approved, which brings us to old business, further discussion of STR issues, statement of purpose, goals, objectives, other management measures. And just I don't know if it was Nip or whoever uses the term, but I love it being a golfer, teeing up the subject. So we just did a little bit of that with Dana, and for background and anybody who reviews the record. In early May, we consolidated some ideas on goals and objectives. Dana said he would like to take a crack at creating a statement of purpose that was more robust than what we had agreed on, which was a good idea because that the statement of purpose in the May 2nd version was just a single sentence. So he did that. We just commented on it. We didn't have time to get it up on the website, the town's website, for the meeting as a supporting document. So we postponed discussion, and Lynn offered to try and merge the two, which she did, submitted it to us. We had agreed to consider it as one of those preliminary drafts, not for public disclosure, but today Friday, we put it all up on the website so that we could have a full discussion of it now. And I think to take it sequentially, I would ask Dana if he'd be willing to describe what he did, what the basis, the background of it was, and we can all read it. It's at the very last, I think, 2 pages of the supporting materials for tonight's meeting. It's actually the last page and the second to last page. So, Dana?
Well, first I wrote a history, which Lynn had included in the last iteration. And I did the history because I thought it lent some purpose and some retrospective information to what I was trying to do. And what I was trying to do was simply outline the reason why we were doing what we were doing in a very broad sense, and in a way that didn't get into the nitty-gritty, the particulars, or any of the details that we might or might not approve of in the future. And I also was going for a document that everybody could agree to in principle, and a document that might support us later on if it came time to, if we were challenged. So I'm assuming you've all read it. The only revision I would make to it at this point, what I would put B as number 1 to protect Noank from the nuisance impact of excessive short-term rentals, including noise, additional vehicles, parking, trash removal. And I would do that simply because noise was the very first problem that came up, which started this whole investigation 2.5 years ago. Number 2, I would put C as number 2, to preserve the residential character of Noank, its close-knit neighborhoods, civic life, community spirit, and sense of community, et cetera, et cetera. And then I specifically thought about A, which now would be number 3, balance the desire of property owners to rent their residential properties to guests for compensation against the desire of residents to preserve the traditional peace and quiet of their residential neighborhoods, as referenced in what is C. And I did that. I like the way, I like the term of balance the desire of property owners, because that's what we are trying to do, I think. We're trying to decide how much favor we're going to give to those who are presently running short-term rentals against those individuals who want to put a stop to the noise, and also who think that short-term rentals threaten the character of Noank. It's a balance. It's not weighing down one side or the other. And then on D, I simply wanted to call to people's attention that the purpose was also to harken back to the original purpose of the Zoning Commission. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Lynn, before we have general discussion, would you like to describe your thought process and how you got to doing what you did on the merging exercise?
Let's see here. Yes, so I thought, I like the idea of balancing the desire of property owners to rent the residential properties to guests for compensation. The balance part of it I liked, but I thought that it went a bit far. The desire of property owners to rent the residential properties to guests for compensation. So I thought that what for the most part, what people were asking for was to do it and enough to help make ends meet or to pay their taxes or so they could stay in their homes. It wasn't this balance, the desire of property owners to rent the residential properties to guests for compensation, can really get in the business, turning it into a pretty intensive business, which people, for the most part, weren't asking for. And then against the desire of residents to preserve the traditional peace and quiet. Well, it wasn't just against the residents to preserve the traditional peace and quiet. It's all of those things, not just to have peace and quiet, but to have neighbors and to have the community, the close-knit community, and to preserve that. It's all of those things, not just that. So that led me to try to change that some. And then I think that it's really important. One thing that was on the original one that Dana hadn't put in was discouraging, is replacing permanently occupied residences or long-term rental properties by non-owner occupied short-term rentals. I thought that was important. And that was 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, those were 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Did I add another one in there? I'm trying to look and see. Nope, I think that was the main one that. Oh, there had also one of the ones, because we talked about it so often, about preventing properties from functioning like hotels with frequent turnovers. The commission had talked about that a lot, and that it wasn't really covered by the other one. So I thought that was important to include.
Okay, thank you. Comments? Anyone? Okay. Go ahead, Dana.
No, Beth had her hand up first.
I don't even see Beth. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Oh, there's too many people up there. I'm going to
Doesn't
change
matter.
your
I
Yep.
appreciate what Lynn has in hers, but I'm concerned that it's just too long. I think that Dana's did hit all of the important points that we talked about. I mean, my goal for these regulations is just to try to make them easy to read by the common person. You shouldn't have to hire a lawyer to be able to understand what they say. And B, and not that Lynn's does that, but it's very lengthy. B, to make the regulation concise and to the point. I think that goes farther. So I liked what Dana did originally. I thought that hit all of our points. Although I do appreciate Lynn's effort and hard work on it.
Anybody else? Dana?
As to balance the desire of property owners, Lynn's comment on that, if we were to take out 2 guests for compensation, I think that might solve. I think that would be a good deletion from her standpoint, from mine. And one of my other comments is, Lynn, I don't know if you discussed your allow homeowners to help pay their property taxes by renting their residential properties to guests compensation as long as the other objectives herein are met. I don't think it's appropriate. I don't think it's the purpose of the zoning commission to tip the scales to a particular group of people who own second homes. That is, if they want property tax relief, then there are other agencies in Connecticut that perhaps could help them do that. But the zoning commission is not the place to do it. And it rubs me the wrong way. I just don't think that that's appropriate to put in there.
In the first one you're talking about, in the
In
original
A.
A of Lynn's.
In her A, yes, in her A, yeah.
And what part exactly is it that you find troubling?
It's all of it.
All of it. And
I would
any
say
of the,
that.
there are 4 options there.
Yeah,
And so any of them, the way they're structured is what you're saying.
that's correct. I don't think it's appropriate for us to even mention helping to pay property taxes.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's one of the reasons I left that out when I drafted my own approach. And my only other comment is her C, prevent properties from functioning like hotels with frequent turnovers. And the only reason I would strike that is simply because I don't know what the definition is of functioning like hotels. And I don't know what frequent turnovers is either. And I don't really want to define it because then you're starting to get into the details and the nitty gritty that we will be dealing with later. I don't think it's necessary at that point.
Yeah, I can take a little responsibility for that one. I think if I go back to May 2nd, that was one I thought was important because of something Nip had said, where when you have rentals turning over so frequently that, you know, people come and go and you never get to know who your neighbors are, even if they're only there for 2 weeks. If it's every weekend, a new group of people, say Thursday to Monday, that's when I started to say it sounds like a hotel. Maybe there are better words, but the concept is, I think we have said in the past, we don't want to have such frequent turnover that there's no sense of neighborhood, of knowing who your neighbors are. And again, the other part of this is they're all interrelated. The more frequently they turn over weekend to weekend, the more likely you're going to have that party syndrome where you come to the beach to play and then you go home and go back to work. And that's not conducive to a neighborly spirit for all the people who live around that house, because they're every weekend, you know, their life is a little bit degraded. So that was the concept why that was in there. Dana?
Yeah, Dana Oviatt, and I agree. I thought I had included that sense in my C, to preserve the residential character of Noank and its close-knit neighborhoods, yada, yada, yada. I was trying to address your concern by using that paragraph to say our community spirit and civic life might be threatened because of too many short-term rental operators.
Okay, so hit your C instead of F under Lynn's. Okay. Okay, Larry, did I see your hand?
Yeah, I just wanted to, I guess, echo Dana's comment that, you know, we shouldn't be talking about what people do with the money they get. All right. So I think the simpler, the better, and less is more. You know, as I look through this, taking stuff out and shrinking this down would get us focused on, you know, the simple, understandable objectives that we have. But all in all, I think that Dana's version of it is a place to start. And I guess my suggestion would be is you could throw it up and edit it so that at the end of this session, there's an agreed upon draft. I mean, would be my closing input.
Well, it's okay with me if we put what's in the, behind the minutes up there. In other words, the 3 pages, and scroll through. I'd like to get everybody to weigh in once on their general sense of how this all is. And I haven't heard Nip and I haven't heard me. So Nip?
Yeah, I like the basic format of Dana's. I like that he reordered them, which adheres to my view that while there will be multiple goals within, they should be listed in relative priority. My preference all along has been that the #1 goal is to preserve the residential character, particularly in the village. And I would like to see that recognized at the beginning. In Dana's paragraph about balancing, I would just suggest that we reverse the order, that we list in the balancing, that we list the preservation of the residential character ahead of the desire of some property owners to rent their property, just to make clear which is the priority in that case. On the comments about being specific about why people rent for financial reasons, I agree with the comments that say that's not appropriate for us to comment on. On the issue of whether or not we have some reference to turnover, I think some reference would be appropriate, because if we're going to insert restrictions later on the amount of turnover, I think it's good, and they will be significant. If we have any, they will be among the more significant restrictions that we impose, and they will be ones that people may object to more strongly. So if we're going to do that, I think it will be helpful if there's something in our initial listing of goals that we can hang our hat on relative to turnover.
Okay. Anybody else? Well, let me go first, Lynn, since everyone has spoken once. Have you spoken once on?
I
Well,
haven't,
no, you
I
just
haven't reacted. I just
right.
explained something.
You just explained yours. Yeah, you go
Yeah.
ahead. Thanks. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Yes. So those others about, to help ends meet a little bit, all that language, I got that from host compliance, the kinds of terminology they use. And I think the purpose of their doing that was to make it very clear that this is limited use, not to just be conducting a regular business. But I don't have any heartache with giving that up. I like what Nip was suggesting on number A. And I think that works because I think it was the traditional peace and quiet. As I said, it was just a little bit of it. So I like Nip's suggestions very much, which is to balance the desire and start out with the residents to preserve the residential character of their neighborhoods versus the desire of the property owners to rent their residential properties. I think that captures it very, very nicely. I also think that the turnover is something, I agree with Nip, that's something that we would be referring back to. And so that's important to have in. I think we also need to be referring back to displacing our replacement of permanently occupied residences and long-term rental properties, because what we do can have a huge effect on that. And that's what really can hollow out the community. So I think that's critically important to leave that one in.
Jen, are you taking real good notes on these? Wait a minute, you're, go ahead. Wait a minute.
Mute.
Larry, okay, there you go.
Where,
Yeah,
where were
you
you
take-
most recently, Lynn? Which one were you talking about just this second?
The one I was just talking about was D.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I just realized I have a structure problem with the ABCDE. Yeah, okay. Okay, that was everybody's one. Nip?
I'd like to support Lynn's recommendation that there be a specific mention that one of our goals is to preserve owner-occupied properties and long-term rentals and not sacrifice them to the short-term rental opportunity. I think that's fundamental to trying to preserve the character, particularly the village.
Boy, I'm hoping Jen is really good at taking notes.
I'm
Yeah. It's getting hard to follow all of this.
Mhm.
Yeah. Beth,
Isn't that though just, I mean, Dana does have in here to preserve the residential character of Noank. Isn't that, you know, I guess I asked Nip and Lynn. Isn't that basically what we're saying when we say preserve the residential character?
Nip?
Nick Tanner. I think one could infer that, but I think it's too important to leave it as an inference, and it should be stated specifically.
I agree. Well said.
So can I jump in? Can I
Yes.
can I ask, so Nip had specific words for that. What were they?
I was speaking off the top of my head. I think Lynn has some language in her draft. Is that correct? Lynn?
I think the first one, which is the shortest one, to just use that one, not do the other one. And when I was doing that, you know, I mentioned something, maximize affordable housing options. Well, affordable housing has a whole legal definition, which wasn't what I meant. So let's just, I think the short version that's there at the beginning is perfectly sufficient. Forget the other one.
What number?
D, there's just the first statement there. There's something in brackets afterwards as an alternate. And I don't think that's a good idea now.
So you just say under D, which had said G in the document, but it's actually D, discourage replacement of permanently occupied residences or long-term rental properties by non-owner occupied STRs.
Period.
Leave it that way. Nip, you agree?
Yes, thank you.
Is that
Is
going
that-
under another heading in Dana's list?
Yeah, it needs to be moved if we all agree with it.
Right, Eric, I still say it'd be easier if we put it up and you can edit it there while we're talking about it, because I'm losing track of everybody's comments.
Well, if you can put up the 3 pages that were at the end of the minutes,
Yep.
at the end of the agenda.
I can do that,
Okay.
and then we can edit it.
Can I read the first one aloud as I have it to see if it's what people think it should be?
No, that's not the right one. What the heck?
Great photograph.
Before
Yeah.
we go to editing, I would like to offer my views, and I've been
Sure.
patiently waiting while everybody else did. So before, Larry, I would even, once you get that ready to go, put it in the background for a minute. Okay, thank you. Here are my views, and I'm hearing a lot of things that I agree with, so it's not way inconsistent. I looked at this, I also wanted to work from Dana's model because of the brevity and again, also appreciating Lynn's hard work. I saw this structured a little bit differently though. I like the history and purpose that Lynn had at the front end of hers, history and problem, it says. And that's actually what Dana had written originally, but when we talked about it way back when, he had said, you know, I don't need to have that in there, but I really think we benefit from it. And I have to say, my view of how this document is going to be of use is not so much in the ordinance, but in the justification for the ordinance. I looked through the book and there are some places where there's a statement of purpose, but mostly ordinances just stand on this is what we're doing. And the best example was Dana had another good idea. He said, go back and review the record and see what everybody said last year. And I've been doing that. And I've gotten up to, the end of last year. Something they said in the summer was, look at the home occupancy section. And I did, and I got curious. So I started to restructure the ordinance in that format. It cut the decision document down to like from 15 to 7 or 8 pages, which is brevity, but it also, that ordinance on home occupancy uses doesn't have anything at the front end.
Home occupation, I think.
Home occupation. Yeah, I'm sorry, home occupation. Thank you. Doesn't have anything about goals and objectives, and it doesn't even have definitions. They're in section 18 at the end of the book. We don't necessarily have to use that model, but that one read very well. It just started out by saying, here's what we're going to do, and then here are the measures we're going to use to do it. Ours is longer because we have more measures and it's a more complicated issue. But so my view, the things we're doing tonight are going to be really critically important to justify the decisions we make and what we put forward in an ordinance. Saying that, I thought the history and the statement of the problem was very useful in that regard. Whether we embellish on it later on as we go makes no difference to me, but as a starting point, I liked having that in there. I also like the ABCD of Dana's, and I agree with the reordering that he and Nip and Lynn have been talking about. I would suggest though in D that we not go into the details, you know, with a lot of dots in between different concepts, because it begs for you to go back to the book and see what was left out when you were using dots. And I think it's appropriate on its own to simply say maintain consistency with the purposes of the Noank Fire District zoning ordinance. So that's point 2. But the other thought I had structurally is, and I just offer this to see what people think. I too like making things short, unlike these comments, but I like the idea of the history and problem. I like the purpose statement that Dana had and that Lynn retained, that short paragraph. And I like the 4 purpose statements as discussed. I also think though there's a room for the goals that we had from the May 2nd document because they're more specific to particular needs as opposed to a purpose statement, which is a little more general. It does lengthen things, but the thing I tried to prepare to see how it would look was the history and problem, the purpose statement, the 4 reordered purpose statements, A, B, C, D, and then the goals from May 2nd with a couple of changes, a consolidation of 2 and 3, and possibly leaving out 5. So you'd end up with 5 or 6 goal statements. Objectives. So that was the 4 structural things. And the only other point I would make is, well, I'd move some things around, but all of us would do that. And I would add in the history and problem a definition of what we mean by short-term rentals, which is rentals less than 30 days. So I guess my basic question, having said all that, is there any interest in having a list of objectives that come after the purposes, or are you satisfied that the purposes alone do the job for you? Again, thinking down the road, whether we have these in the ordinance or not is a subject to be decided by the group. Either way, it'll be necessary when we're trying to justify this to all the critics and the people who disagree with us. Having that document will be very handy in advance to say, here's why we did what we did. So, Nip?
Yeah, I think where the discussion was headed was to take what Dana wrote and consider his reordering and some modifications, and then adding a couple of other items addressing the turnover and preserving, owner occupancy and long-term rentals. So it was sort of a hybrid, as I understood it. I wasn't, writing it down, but it sounded like we were taking Dana's and adding a couple of things that Lynn had spelled out, and she argued for them being important enough to be added to Dana's version. So it's sort of somewhere headed in the direction you were headed, but a bit shorter.
I agree. Right up to the point, I'm still curious whether it's of an advantage to us to have a list of objectives after we've listed those revised and expanded purpose statements. Dana?
So what's the difference between an objective and a statement of purpose?
Well, technically, although these objectives don't really do it, they should get you closer to a measurable outcome. Again, they don't necessarily do that. But when you say discourage activities that interfere with other residents' enjoyment, that's similar to one of the purpose statements. Is a little bit more specific. I'm just trying to decide whether there's a value to adding the objectives we had on May 2nd as the third part of this. History and problem first, the four or five or six statements of purpose, and then is there a value of taking those objectives from May 2nd? I'm not hard and fast one way or another. I'm wondering if it helps the document and it helps the understanding of the public to see some of those things in there from May 2nd that don't occur in the same way in Dana and Lynn's revision.
Nip, my suggestion is we proceed with getting Dana's document the way we'd like it. And then after we've got it, and let's visit the question, is there anything critical missing? And how do we add it? Do we add it the way you suggested, or do we weave it into find a way to weave it into what we've already agreed to?
Anybody disagree? Okay, let's do that.
And tomorrow morning, I'm going to go through everything we've just done. Thank goodness we have a recording of it. And
Yeah.
I'll send you all what we have at that point.
Well, and that will be
We're
useful.
still going to do it.
Larry's suggestion, we're going to try and do some of it right now. Which,
Can I at least read A, which is
yes,
the only one I think I have perfect, which is balance the desire of residents to preserve the traditional peace and quiet of their residential neighborhoods against the desire of property owners to rent their residential properties.
No.
No.
It's balance the desire of residents to preserve the residential character of their neighborhoods, I think, against the desire of property owners to rent their residential properties.
Okay.
I'm very confused now. I can't see anybody, so I can't raise my hand.
I saw you raise it. Dana,
Yeah, I see you.
What? I've got,
The first thing I think we ought to do is reorder these the way Dana had suggested they be reordered, because I heard Nick and Lynn both say that was a beneficial suggestion.
So C is the first one.
That becomes number one. Is that correct, Dana?
yes.
Okay.
Okay.
And number two, C, okay. No, you guys do it because it changed as we were talking. So what, Dana and Lynn and Nip, what did you think should be the new number B? The one that's there now?
Yes. This is Dana.
Yep.
But reordered.
Reworded, right. Reworded. We'll do the rewording after we get the order right. And C was the nuisance impact. We're going to leave that as C. Is that correct?
For
Okay.
now.
Yeah. Now, before we start wordsmithing, the two things that Lynn had talked about in her version, that there was general agreement on moving it into this section. Let's identify those, cut and paste and move them. So look, scroll down into Lynn's A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and tell me which one of those two need to go forward into Dana's.
C and D.
C and D. Does everybody agree with that?
Yes.
Copy them, move them up there, and put them before what you have there as D. I would put them before D. I think D should become new F. Yeah, there you go. C, D, E. F is maintain consistency with the purposes, on and on. All right, A, B, C, D, E, F. So does everybody agree that that contains every concept, rewording to come? There's nothing else you want to add up into these 6 purposes? Nip?
No, I had a comment about this new list, but not
Okay,
added to it.
okay. Anything else that needs to be moved forward from the other list? Okay, wait a minute. We got somebody who wants to get in here. Okay, we have a new attendee on the phone, just so you know for the record. Okay, so that, let's answer 2 questions, then get Nip's question, and then we'll start wordsmithing. Do you agree that it's useful to have the history and problem moved up before the word purpose in Dana's version? Again, Dana was the original author of that, so it's not like we're adding to his work. It was his work to begin with. It just wasn't presented.
Yes.
Anybody disagree? Okay, let's move that forward to Dana's section. Yep, before that. Yep.
Yep.
Okay. I would suggest another structural change here. See how you feel about this. See that paragraph that says short-term rentals are not a permitted use right under the word purpose? I would maintain that sentence belongs in the history and problem before because of the above concerns.
That's fine.
Because it's a statement of the problem. There's 2 problems there in those 2 sentences. Does anybody have, no, I would add it after that next sentence, Larry.
After it? Okay.
Yep.
Larry, you're a great wordsmith.
I haven't wordsmithed yet. I'm itching.
Okay. And then in the last sentence of that section, because of the above concerns, I would take out and the fact that short-term rentals are not a permitted use in the district. Just have it read, because of the above concerns, the zoning commission decided to create regulations for this activity.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Good. Everybody agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. Let's see. Can I move this
History,
way?
purpose.
I don't see all of our attendees anymore. Did Beth leave?
I'm here.
Oh, okay. Oh, there you are. I wonder why.
Yeah.
There we
You
are.
gotta scroll on the,
It's there.
I got them now. I have 6 of us on visually.
if you put the grid pattern and then drag the box bigger, you'll see everything.
Yeah, I'll get Jen in there, right. Okay, there's Jen and one person on the iPhone. Should be another. There's another one. Okay, now we have everybody. Thanks. All right, so that's the history and problem. Purpose now. Nip, you had a concern before we started tinkering with words.
Yeah, I think we should revisit the question of where the 2 that we added best fit into the list of the existing.
Okay, good idea.
I think we're in agreement that A and B were our top 2 priorities. I think the question is whether the new D and E fall after the old C, or whether one or more of them might go ahead of C.
Thoughts? Beth?
I feel like C should be the new B. Because that's really, I mean, most of the complaints that we've heard are about that issue.
New B or new D?
C, to protect the nuisance, from the nuisance impact, should be the new B, making B the new C.
B as in boy.
Yeah, just split them. That would be my suggestion.
Okay, any disagreement with that?
Yes,
Okay. Don't make that change yet, Larry, till we resolve it. Balance of property. Okay, be perfectly honest, I have the same view I had in the middle of May. This is a short list. I like A the way it is. The ones that follow afterwards, you know, what order they're in doesn't really make a lot of difference, so somebody else can resolve that. Beth's right. That was the bigger issue that started us on this. The community, sense of neighborhood has kind of overtaken us, but it doesn't mean that the noise type of thing isn't important. I just think they're all important, with the exception of F, which is kind of a boilerplate. So who would like to put it above B, or who would like to leave it the way it is? Dana, Nip, Beth, Lynn, weigh in.
I'd say leave it.
The way it is now? And Nip, that's your view also?
yes.
Okay, Dana?
You're saying leave it, Nip and Lynn, or move it?
Here's what I'm
Let's
thinking.
answer that first, Dana.
Okay.
Lynn, Dana, they're saying leave C, the highlighted version of the highlighted wording, right where it exists. Don't move it,
Okay.
but it still stays there.
No, I get it. No, I get it. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Now, Lynn, sorry.
I think I appreciate the order in which this was brought up and everything, but I think what's really good is that number, that A, this is for reading quickly through it. A is a big picture kind of thing. And so I think it would help if we go from big picture thing down to more specific things. So the more specific things right now are C and D, maybe arguably E, but those would be more at, the things that are just very, very specific, put those at the ends, the more general ones at the beginning.
Okay. So Dana, hearing all of that, do you like the order as it looks right now, or do you think what is highlighted should go up above B?
I think what's highlighted should go above B.
Okay, so that's 2 in favor of moving it and 2 opposed to moving it. I love this chairmanship stuff. I'm going to break the tie. I think it ought to stay the way it is, because those 2 are big picture issues, and it only takes reading one more sentence to to come to the noise and nuisance thing. So it's not like it's something going to get lost in a big list. Nip?
Now, this is a procedural issue. I think early on in our work this year, we said that the decisions needed to be made by the full commissioners and that the alternates could weigh in, but they would not vote on the final decisions that we made. So much as I respect Lynn and her opinion, I think to be consistent with that earlier decision, she should not be voting on these kinds of decisions.
Okay, I'm going to disagree with you and give you a good
Not an
reason.
alternate right at the moment.
Yeah, she's seated as a member. She has all the rights and privileges of membership when she's seated for an absent member. So it's you may have an opinion on that, but that's what the legal ruling is from Casey. Nip.
Yeah, we made that decision amongst ourselves about how we were going to proceed with this. And a very simple way to deal with it in this case would be for Lynn to abstain in order to honor that. But if we proceed over the next couple of months to draft these regulations with a patchwork of who votes and doesn't vote, I think we are creating a document that doesn't have the appropriate support from the commission members. And I think that would be a mistake.
Point of order.
Larry?
I think, Rick, you're correct. That would be in violation of the commission and zoning commission statutes. So you can't remove Lynn's rights by law. You can't, as a commission, say, Lynn, you don't get a vote because she's already got the vote. Now, if Lynn wants to volunteer and abstain, that's her choice. But I think
That's what I suggested.
No,
Listen,
well, but
that's what I
you're
suggested.
One at a time.
so I don't think there's an issue. I mean, if you look in history, I think I might have been either the most consistent voting member over the 2 years before this, because there's all people leaving, et cetera, than some of the regular commission members. And I think the point that was made by the commission was to include the alternates in the discussions for that reason, but only the seated members could vote in any one session, but you had the benefit of everyone consistently. So I think that provides an excellent basis in law as well as rationality. But I'll stop there, Rick. I think it's your interpretation.
Okay. Dana, Beth, Lynn haven't spoken on the subject. Nip and Larry and I have. How do you feel on the procedure issue that Nip has raised? Dana?
Well, first of all, what we're doing now, I don't think is as important as voting on something. It's moving around stuff on a document. Lynn has already contributed significantly to actually writing it, and why she shouldn't, even as an alternate, be involved in, moving things around after she's written something. I don't know why that should be. That's my first insight. My second concern is that my second wish would be that ideally speaking, the ideal scenario is we would never meet to discuss STRs unless all 4 members of the commission, all 5 members of the commission were present at one meeting. That would save us an awful lot of hassle.
You saying it would save us a lot of hassle if alternates?
So the part of the problem is, Lynn acts as a seated member, and she makes decisions, but then 2 meetings later, Blake comes back and decides that he's going to vote against something that was decided, 2 meetings ago. I don't know if that's a problem or not, but it could happen.
Yeah, let's see. Beth, you have a view on this?
My only view would be, I don't think this is an issue of preference. I think it's an issue of what's legal. Is it permissible or is it not permissible? John Casey already indicated that it was permissible, and we have been including our alternates in this process since the inception. If we, maybe at the inception, we should have had a discussion, but we have been including them. It is perfectly legal to do so according to John Casey. Obviously, they can't vote on the ultimate issue. I do understand the concerns that Nip and Dana raised, but at this point, I don't know, because we have started the process this way, that it would be appropriate at this time to change it. So I would say let's keep including our alternates in the discussion. Certainly, they've had some really good contributions. At the end of the day, when it comes down to a vote, it's just going to be the sitting members.
Okay. Nip?
For clarification, my point was only on whether alternates who are filling in for a full commission member should be voting on decisions we make about these regulations. And I was remembering a discussion that we had in a commission meeting where we agreed earlier this year that it would be best if the critical decisions were made only by full commission members. In no way should that, raising that issue and referring back to that earlier discussion and decision, be interpreted as me not wishing alternates to be included. I have been and will be fully in favor of them participating, except for voting on the final documents that we draft.
Oh, okay. That clears it up for me. And
Well,
Larry?
That's not how I remember it. We can go back to the minutes. It wasn't that only the full members would vote on anything. It was only the sitting members would vote on anything. The alternates would not get a vote in that context, because I was asked that question by you, Rick, specifically as an alternate, and I agreed I should not vote as an alternate on any voting decision, but would be, but the input would be welcome. I don't see that, and it also opens it up that from a procedural point of view is that either Lynn or myself, if we're seated members and not allowed to vote, that then creates an issue where we can raise that the vote was not legal because you did not allow a legally permitted seated member to participate in it. And both alternates have been elected by, by due process, same as a regular member. So I think it's more legally exposure if they're restricted from voting than not. I mean, Beth, you're the legal mind here, but that's kind of my view.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, as I don't profess to be a zoning expert, I'll leave that to John, but what he indicated was that, until the final decision that alternates were permissible. And so I don't know exactly if not allowing well, yeah, I mean, I guess my concern would be, yeah, if Lynn's seated right now, she is not an alternate. She is seated as a full member right now. How can we say that she can't vote? I don't have any legal, case law or statutory support for that. That's just my gut feeling. And based upon what John had indicated before, I think that's probably the way it's going to go. I just don't see how we could do that.
Yeah. Let me weigh in here. I'm sensitive, or at least I understand the concern that our position, all of these discussions we're having are all not final, because we're going to bounce back back and forth on things as we go, and different ideas move us until we get to two key points. When we vote on what goes out to public hearing, and when we vote as to what becomes a final ordinance. And I think what I hear Nip saying is on those two decision points, we should move heaven and earth to make sure it's only the full-time elected commissioners, even at the expense of not having 5 members seated. If somebody's missing that day of the 5 commissioners, we'd have a meeting with 4. We could have a meeting with 3 if we wanted to. At that point, we'd probably want to postpone the meeting and get a fuller slate. The latter part of what Nip was saying, the first part troubled me, but then I heard him saying that in all of this development activity, where we agree by consensus, or even we agree on a vote to have something in or to move something or change language, a seated alternate serving as a member has a vote, full rights and privileges, because it's always a decision that can be adjusted when the other member comes back if he's of a different mind. That's a little messy. It takes us a little bit longer, but it preserves the right of any of us to resurface an issue 2 weeks from now, even if it was decided 2 weeks back and further information or a different point of view has come up. We always have a right to say, I'd like to get that thing back on the table and talk about it. You know, we're developing something here. We're not making final decisions. So I would say in the realm of where we're talking now and for the next several weeks, if an alternate is seated as a member, full rights and privileges. When we get to those 2 final critical points, that's when we either have to have had more discussion or we have to decide that only commissioners should vote on those 2 dates. Does that help anybody in seeing a way to deal with this? Okay, Dana?
I think it helps me. I just don't know how we got in this discussion because moving paragraphs around doesn't constitute voting.
Yeah.
Or maybe I've misconstrued the entire last 10 minutes.
Well, Nip raised a procedural question, and you know it's fair to raise those from time to time. It did sidetrack us some, and maybe we should work a little harder to hold the ideas to the end, or to the right time. Because I don't hear Nip saying that he thinks Lynn shouldn't vote on anything that we're doing right now. So let's keep doing what we're doing now and move things around and do the wordsmithing and try and get done before 9, which is, I wanted to hit that goal for people. So again, are there other things from the Lynn version that you want to add in the Dana version? Okay, Nip.
No, I'm sorry. I thought we were.
Yeah, let me keep us rolling then.
Yep.
Is there anyone who wants to change the order? We kind of concluded that one. I think I broke the tie on that, to just leave A, B, C, D, E, F the way they exist right now. If I don't hear a strong objection, we'll leave that for now. Can always change it later. Now let's wordsmith them. I think Jen asking and Larry doing, we got that the way people were satisfied. Is that correct?
The one I read aloud was B, or is now B.
Is now B. The one Larry edited was to change the order of the 2 concepts in that one. To preserve the residential character comes first. Oh, wait a minute. You're right.
I thought Dana had asked that it be changed from balance the desire of property owners to rent their residential to move that after, maybe it was
Yes.
Nip,
Yes.
and have desire of residents to preserve the traditional peace and quiet.
They all wanted to have balance the desire of residents to preserve the traditional peace and quiet of their residential neighborhoods with the desire of property owners to rent their residential properties to guests. Well,
And then we
residential
dropped
properties. Yeah, we took out the
the
compensation.
compensation bit. And we had It had been against the desire in the original. I don't know what, if you want to keep that word.
Balance the desire, rent their properties, take out to guests for compensation.
Right.
So balance the desire of residents to rent their properties against the desire of residents to preserve the traditional peace, quiet of residential neighborhoods. Everybody like that, the way it reads?
Yeah.
That was backwards.
Yeah, it needs to flip. First thing is flip those two, the order.
Oh, yeah. I thought he did that. When I started reading, I thought, yeah, that phrase needs to go after the word balance.
Whoops. Oh, that didn't work. Darn it.
Cut.
Yeah. I don't know why that wasn't. There we go.
There you go. After the.
After that, yeah.
Well, I'll fix it.
All right. So balance the desire of residents to preserve traditional peace, quiet of their residential neighborhood against the desire of residents to rent their properties, and then take out against the at the end.
Or of property owners. Right? Oh, okay.
One thing I thought.
Let's make sure we have that right first.
All right.
Balance the desire of residents to preserve and against the desire of residents to rent their properties. Everybody satisfied with how that reads?
The order.
No, the language of B.
One thing I thought that Nip had said was something about, for the first clause, is to preserve the residential character of their neighborhoods.
No, that's up in
That's
A.
A.
No, I'm talking about B.
I know, but the words you just read are in A. Do you want them to occur in both places?
She's working on the old one. You got to look at the screen, not the document.
Yeah, I am looking at the screen. Okay, so I just thought that we wanted something that would be about more than peace and quiet, to be more general than traditional peace and quiet. It's not about traditional peace and quiet, because that's only addressing the noise. It's the whole residential character of it.
That's in A.
It's in
Yeah.
A of Dana's originally.
Yeah. So is there other wording that talks about?
Well, you had in your version, Lynn, had put out B in your version that was a one line, preserve the traditional peace and quiet of residential neighborhoods. So you must have thought it was important at that point.
Yeah, but I can improve it, can I?
Yeah.
I have one thing, which is in the current B that Larry has, where at the end where it says the desire of residents to rent their properties. In the original, it had said the desire of property owners to rent their
That's
residential.
probably better.
Good
Yep.
catch.
Yeah. Good. All right. Everybody happy with B now? Okay, Lynn, I don't want to lose the point you were making.
Yeah, the point is the contrast there. It's not just about peace and quiet. It's about all of it. And so I'm thinking of what's better wording for it. I can't come up far off the top of my head, but there's better wording for it.
Well, you did say including noise, additional vehicles, parking, and trash removal in your B.
I'm not going back to the other. I'm just trying to work from this one to capture a broader sense of the residential neighborhood, what's good about it.
Why don't we leave it for the time being?
Yeah. All
All
right.
right. Okay, C.
This is a minor tweak that applies to all of this. Going back up to the opening of this section, the purpose of these regulations are. It should be purposes, plural, of these regulations are to, and then we shouldn't start any of the other ones with to. Otherwise, if you read it, are to. So the twos in the lower sections should be deleted. Thank you. Good wordsmithing, Larry.
Yeah, I'm worth something anyway.
I would
one
suggest,
thing that I had done, and when I rewrote it, is I just put I put the STR regulation purpose is to.
okay,
shortens it.
let's try and stick to substantive. I have a lot of editorial and grammatical things like Nip just offered, and he's correct. That can come later. Let's deal with substantive. C, I would say, I'm not sure I like the word excessive in parentheses there. I mean, we want to protect Noank from the nuisance impact of short-term rentals.
Agreed.
As soon as you say excessive, then I wonder, well, what's excessive? And, you know, and it becomes unnecessary. So I would suggest we take that out.
Agreed.
Any disagreement? Seeing none. Anybody else on C? Okay, D. Yeah, D is, Nip, you had mentioned it's a little bit like a fish out of water, but we want to get that concept in. So does anybody have language that would improve that?
Hey, I'm Dana Oviatt. Can I?
Yes, Dana?
Nip had some language a while ago speaking to the concept of owners running short-term rentals like commercial properties. I mean, I've got the word commercial written down here, and I wonder if that could be used. I guess I'm asking Nip for his inspiration there.
While you're waiting, maybe one suggestion on this to take out functioning like hotels and simply say prevent properties from frequent turnovers. There's got to be better words to say that, but functioning like hotels is going to irritate people because they're going to say, well, we're not a hotel.
Yeah. No, I
That's
think
just a conceptual idea, hotel, and it probably shouldn't be in the words here. It's the frequent turnovers that is the concern for the reasons in A, B, and C. So prevent properties from
no, I'll just
yeah, just take all that out for now, and we'll probably find something better to say afterwards. But the concept's there. Take out well, prevent properties from. It could say from frequently turning over. You know. Yeah. And take out having. Okay, for now as a placeholder, is everybody okay with that?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, any other comments on D? Okay, E. Comments on E, Nip?
Yeah, I would take out the words before short-term rentals, because, you know, there's going to be a variety of ownership status for operators of short-term rentals. I think the main goal is, as I understand it, is to discourage places that would otherwise be permanently occupied from becoming short-term rentals.
So just take that out.
Right.
Yeah.
That's my suggestion, but
Yeah, that cleans that up.
That's fine.
Just, Larry, just before you leave that, I don't know if we defined STRs anywhere. We know what we mean, but maybe you want to spell that out.
Whoops.
And actually, yeah, take that out now.
That's it. And the purpose above, I think, is.
Yeah, and
it's
that
in the
reminds
section
me,
above. That's where it should be up there.
and right up at the top, under history and problem, the first paragraph. Again, we'll do the little wordsmithing later, but under history and problem, farther up. There you go. End of the first paragraph. I would say at the end of that, purpose of renting short term, I would say comma, defined here as renting for a period of less than 30 days. But just not lose sight of that. Does everybody agree with that?
Whoops.
Yeah.
I was
Very
typing,
large
I was reading the other thing and typing it that way. Yeah. Let's see.
Defined here as renting for a period of less than 30 days. Everybody agree with that? Okay. So scroll back down to D under the purposes. I'm sorry, E. There you go. Discourage replacement of permanently occupied residences or long-term rental properties by short-term rentals. Everybody agree with that? Okay, going to F. I had suggested we just end the first line with a period after ordinance, but how do you all feel about that?
I agree with that. That's good.
Anybody
Dana,
else?
I'd like to hear from Dana.
Uh-huh. Dana?
I think it probably could be taken out.
Okay. Disagreement? All right, so we'll do that one that way. Now, Larry, can you cut and paste from F, just above where your cursor is, up to the beginning of the history and problem? Put that into a new document.
Yep.
And send it out to everyone as the new working draft for statement of purpose goals. Actually, before you do that, let's now decide, A, if there's anything else that people want to have in here that isn't there. Always leave opportunity to put things in that might be missing. Actually, I did have, well, not there. Never mind. My only other question there is it worthwhile to put the goals in from, even if they're placeholders, from the May 2nd draft? Scroll up to the beginning of this section. Yeah, those. Does anybody think there's a value of putting those from from objectives down through those 7, putting it at the end of it and seeing what the draft looks like when it gets emailed out to us? I think at this stage, trying to.
There's a lot of redundancy.
Yeah, they all look like they're
Yeah.
there.
Most of them are redundant. There is one that I have. I would consolidate 2 and 3, and then I wonder if they would fit if it would be something that would fit in the other document. I looked at that as discourage acquisition or replacement of permanently occupied. It's actually pretty close to one of the ones we had.
Right here, E.
Yeah, yeah. I had discourage acquisition or replacement of permanently occupied residences or long-term rental properties for by short-term rentals. Yeah, the only really thing left, because we dealt with all the rest of what I had here. Do we care about adding acquisition or replacement? Or do we consider replacement covers the base? Anybody comment? Let's leave it as it is then, and never mind what I said. Okay, so that document then from history and problem down.
Here.
And what I would suggest is people look at the May 2nd goal objectives that we just talked about, that there's a lot of redundancy. Look in that list and see if there's anything there that moves you to want to put it into the Dana's revised document that we've just worked on. I'll do that offline, and we all can do that. If you have something like that, get it to me. We'll add it in. If there's no additions, then we'd be okay with what we just did. Well, that was useful. Well, one thing I do want to talk about before we get done.
Hey, Rick.
Yeah.
I'm having a hard time hearing. There's a lot of background noise that's
Yeah,
coming in.
sounds like somebody has a vacuum going, but it's not here.
Okay, it's not here.
Well, Larry, can you mute everybody and we'll just unmute the speaker? Okay, that sounds better. So looks like we're in good shape. Okay. One thing I want to talk about, we had set out a schedule of 3 meetings for June. The next one is Thursday, June 25th. What I would suggest is that next meeting, we try and finish our decision-making on NIPS matrix. That has the, what do we do with the columns? It has the days per month, which is a key thing, and it has the 3 things that Larry had originally suggested to be in there, which is, permit fees, types of permits, enforcement, and so forth. So there's a list of a half a dozen things. Definitions, the columns, days per month, the moratorium issue, the permit fee. There's 2 types of permit fees. There's, well, I'm sorry, not permit fee, permit periods and enforcement. There's 2 types of enforcement. If you violate a provision, you're a permit holder, you violate a provision. Do we want to do that with a permit or just by permit revocation? The other thing is, what do you do if somebody is operating without a permit? So I think that's a subject we ought to have some discussion, because if he's operating without a permit and you don't have a permit to revoke, you need some other tool to keep them from misbehaving. And I would say a big hefty permit on the order of $1,000. And if he doesn't pay it, it's a lien on his property. And if he does it 5 times, he's got to pay somebody $5,000 when he sells his house. It's that kind of logic. We need something to ensure that people won't just be scofflaws. Beth? Oh, wait a minute. Okay.
Isn't that just, with all of our regulations, if somebody's violating them, then a cease and desist is issued. And under the terms of my understanding of the statutory scheme, there are fines and penalties that are built in with that, and attorney's fees and costs that can be rendered. I mean, I don't know. I would
Well,
think
that's
that
pretty-
that statutory scheme would cover this situation, but I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, if that can be substantial enough to be a deterrence against bad behavior, then maybe we don't have to do anything with it. Anyway, that's what I'd like to talk about at the next meeting. Clean up the matrix. And then after, 2 weeks later, it's going to be after July 4th holiday. Then we get into the remaining decisions, which are in the decision document. And at that point, after the June 25th meeting, I would say then we release the decision document. I will have had the time to get all of these decisions we've made in the meantime into it, so that what's left is other things we want to have in a draft ordinance. So that's kind of setting out a schedule for the next 2 meetings, or if you will, 2 to 3 meetings, and that would take us to about the end of July. So discussion on that idea? Yeah,
It sounds good to me.
okay. Nip? Oh, I'm sorry, wait a minute, Nip. Okay, go ahead.
As I emailed to you previously, I will not be at the next meeting.
Okay. See if we can find an alternative date. Well,
I'll stick with
that's
what
only 9 days from now, so we're not going to be able to. There's a fair amount of work that goes into Jen and me to get one of these things going, and Larry. So is anybody interested in July 1st or 2nd, which would be Wednesday or Thursday of the following week? I'm not against, Nip will hate to hear this, but I'm not against if a person can't attend a meeting, we fill in with an alternate just like we're doing tonight. However, if we can make an adjustment that's timely and can get people back on board, I'm willing to do that too. What I'd be opposed to is just pushing things off another week or two, because we will run out of time and we will lose our focus if we go 3 weeks in between meetings, good ones like we have tonight. So having said that, I'm open to an alternative date that pushes that one June 25th to the following week, the 1st or 2nd. Nip?
Don't do it for me. Once we get out there, I'm into a period where I'm likely to have family here, and I'm not going to be available.
Okay, so let's do June 25th. Larry was the next one up. He would be seated for that discussion as a member for NIP, and if Blake can't make it, then Lynn would also be seated. Any objection to that schedule? June 25th, 2 hours. It's a Thursday. The next one would be July 7th or 9th, somewhere in that week after the July 4th. And do you agree that in that July meeting, that would be the right time to bring the draft decision document out into public view? Again, that'll get some attention and people will be interested in what's in there because they'll think it's a much bigger deal than it really is. But we got to cross that bridge sometime. Lynn? Oh, wait. This moving everyone is crazy.
Sorry. Yeah, two things. One, on the matrix, I wondered if you wanted to add to that any discussion on whether there should be a limit on how many short-term rentals someone can have in the fire district.
Limit of how many? You mean like the 26 or the 34 number per year?
No, can they have 3 houses that they're renting out? Can they have,
I
that?
have that in the decision document, actually, because it was raised at a past meeting.
Okay.
But it's not in the matrix. You're right. I mean, that's a worthwhile discussion.
Yeah.
So add 1 property per permit holder. Just a conceptual thought. A lot of these things that regulate what somebody's doing now, we're going to have a choice to make when we finalize a draft ordinance, and we're going to have another choice to make when we approve an ordinance. Then this is one of those examples. You already know some people are doing it. So you're either going to have to somehow provide them the ability to continue doing what they're doing, but tell everybody else they can't, or you're going to have to tell everybody they can't do it, thus having an impact potentially for new people, but a real impact for somebody who's owns 2 houses. I don't care which way we go, but just understand that the volume of opposition you'll get per person will be directly proportional to how many houses a person owns. Somebody who owns 3 houses would hate the sound of that idea, but maybe it's a good idea anyway, and we just take the slings and arrows. Or we say there's a cutoff. I don't care one way or another, but remember, those are the kind of decisions that people will get very cranky about. Nip. Nip. Okay. Go
If
ahead,
I'm
Nip.
thinking of the same specific situation that you're thinking of, the question is not having different properties, but having multiple buildings on one property. And you can deal with one of those without having to deal with both of them.
No, that's not, I don't know which one that is. I wasn't thinking about that. I was thinking of a case where a person may own 3 houses spread out over Noank. I don't know that that's true. I think it's true, just
I don't
because of
believe it is.
the. Really? Okay.
Correct. I don't believe that's
All
true.
right. So the question to be added into the matrix would be only one property per permit holder. Is that what you're saying, Lynn? Wait a minute. I'm gonna unmute everybody. This is,
One permit per person or family, husband, wife, whatever. There it is again.
it's some background noise at Beth. Sorry, Beth. I want to be sure those are the same things. One property per permit holder. Is it also one permit per property? Do they mean the same thing?
No,
No.
Yeah, I didn't think so. So which is it we want to do?
each person or family unit can only have one license, one property, one that they are renting, one short-term rental business, whatever.
So one person can have
You get one of them
only one short-term rental
permit.
permit, because we've already said it's a permit per house, not a permit to a person, and he can do multiple houses. We decided that, or at least that was the way we all leaned months ago or weeks ago. So the matrix,
You can't buy 3 houses. That would say you can't buy 3 houses and use all of them as short-term rentals. You get one.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to talk about.
Okay, I think Art was first.
oh yeah, I have a hard time seeing his hand because of that in the background. Yeah, Nip and then Larry. Nip. We're not getting your sound. I don't know why.
Thank you.
Okay. Every time I click it, the microphone goes back.
Okay, I'm back.
Okay, good.
There's a separate question. I understand Lynn's point and understand what she is recommending there. There's a separate question. There are multiple properties, at least in the village, where there are outbuildings that have residential capability, some of which have been rented in the past. The question is, if you have a property with one or more accessory buildings that are capable of being rented, are you allowed to rent those multiple accessory buildings and/or rent them along with the main house? I'm not lobbying for a decision, but that's a practical question that needs to be answered.
In the decision document, I put in both options because it's come up before. And the way I worded it was, if it's a legally authorized residence according to the town of Groton, you could rent that. But yes or no, maybe you could not also rent the main house. In other words, it was one building, one dwelling per property. But if you lived in your house and you wanted it to be the outbuilding, and the outbuilding was a legally authorized building by the town, then it would be okay because it would be one rental per property. It's just how I formed it in the decision document. But is that something we should add into the matrix to have that point discussed also?
At some point, you're going to have to
Yeah.
decide what to do about it. And there is at least one property in the village that I know of where there's a main house and there are two accessory buildings, which are apparently legitimate rental property, residential properties, which traditionally have been rented.
And those accessory buildings are legal residences according to the town?
Apparently,
Oh, okay.
they've been rented for years.
Yeah.
Probably they were grandfathered maybe?
Don't know. I just know that that's going on, and
Yeah.
the family has been attending our discussions,
Yeah.
interested in what we do.
So we'll add that in so we can have a debate on it. All right. Other things to 525. Okay, any other additions to be in the matrix for the June 25th meeting? Okay.
I think Lynn's got her hand up.
Lynn, thank you.
Yes, this isn't for the matrix, but it was the second thing that I wanted to bring up. As we've gone through the matrix, we're looking at each thing separately. We have yet to look at or discuss how things mesh together and trade-offs with those. And my concern is if we go directly from the matrix to the draft document, that we won't ever have that discussion, because going through the draft document, it's the same kind of thing, one thing at a time. So I have a proposal about how to go about doing that. And it is this. And I'll say, just having attended recently the Noank school gardens, where there were different proposals that the town council was paying attention to, and then the public weighed in on it. But I think it would be a good idea if any interested commissioners would give a straw man, one at a time, a straw man document, not written out like your draft document, but just the points, the elements. You would do this and this and this and this and this, because that would reach the goals. And then have the other commissioners question them, criticize it, critique it, and let that person defend it. I would be willing to go first to do that. I can think of a couple different ones I could do, because there's more than one way to, accomplish this. But I think that could be useful to start looking at the whole thing organically, how you put it together in trade-offs.
So 7 individuals, how would, if you were the
If they want to.
if you were the zoning czar, how would you form a plan to address these issues? And then we can just kind of compare them and look at them and see how we individually think everything fits together.
Yeah, and would probably, with a little bit of pre-planning, let's say if Dana and I, had one that was a lot alike, as I say, I could do some different ones. So if I kind of knew where he was coming from, then I could go and do a different one. But and not everyone has to do one, but they could be, because I think there are some different ideas about how you might put it together, and I think it'd be good to see here it is in its entirety, and then like question and answer and critique, and then I think everybody understands it better, and I think the public would understand better about like how do these things fit together, and with the goal, with the goal oriented, how do you accomplish these goals with those zoning regulations? I think that could be useful. What do other people think?
Yeah, my question exactly. How do people think about that? Dana?
Yep. So Dana Oviatt, I mean, I like the idea. I like the concept for several reasons. Number one, it would give me an idea about how other people stand on these various issues. Because as we go through this matrix, I'm not really sure I understand where other people are coming from philosophically and where they're going to. And number two, it would give me a chance to present limited permits once again and to give that a hearing, which I don't think it really has had so far. I don't know how it fits into discussing the matrix and going to where Rick wants to go, but I like the idea a lot because I'd like to hear from other people what they actually think.
Okay, others? Yep.
I like the idea. Mine is already out there. It's the matrix. And given that all the discussions up to this point have basically shot down many elements of the matrix, I would really like to see a comprehensive effort from the other members of the commission to see how they would like to see this approached holistically, not just, I don't like this, I don't like that.
Okay. Others? I agree too. I like the idea. I think it would be very beneficial to see how each of us individually fit things together. So, so let's do that. What kind of time frame are we looking at? Have that for the July meeting, July 9th? Does that give people enough time? Or do you want to push harder and have it on the June 25th meeting, which is 9 days from now?
No, that's pretty soon.
Lynn, you have all of this in your mind. If you can't put your plan together tonight before midnight, I'd be stunned. Yeah, till midnight plus 9 days. No, I'm only making that suggestion. If you want more time, we'll do it for the July.
I haven't done my taxes yet.
Oh, well, that's your problem, not the zoning commission.
I know.
Okay, July meeting? July 9th. Okay, so get them, let's see. Now we have to figure out how to do this and with the governor's constraints. If we want this documents available for us to discuss at that meeting, we have to get them in advance and post them on the town website. So, Jen, we need a couple of days anyway we need a couple of days to put everything together, agenda plus supporting documents, and then the town needs a couple of days advance to get them up on the website, right? So 4 days before is the 5th. What is the 5th? Is that a Monday or a Tuesday? 9th, I think, is a Thursday. So the 6th, and that's...
The 5th is a Sunday.
5th is a Sunday. Yeah, so Monday, the 6th, we would have to have them by noon. It's better to get them ahead of the holiday. You know, say get them by July 2nd. Give us some time to put them together. You're all going to be doing holiday stuff, so you're not going to be working on this Sunday, the 5th. So we don't need to give you to the 6th to get it in. Let's get it in on July 2nd, which is a little better than, it's like 2 weeks plus a day from now. All right? And then we'll put them all together in one document. We'll get them to the town, get them up on the website, so then we can talk about them on the 9th. How's everybody with that?
Already got mine.
Yep. Well, but this is your opportunity to make a revision if you choose to.
It was perfect as written.
Yeah, I forgot that. I'm sorry. I apologize for that. Okay, to me by July 2nd. Okay, anybody else have other orders of business? I think I tried to get us done before 9 and it's 2 minutes up. Jen?
I just wanted to see, did we delete F from the purposes of these regulations?
No, we deleted, I think we deleted the after the first line. We ended the sentence after the word ordinance. Because Dana was the defining one. He had written it that way and he said, you know, on reflection, seeing the discussion, we could take the rest of that out. Is that correct, Dana?
Or was it
Yeah.
take it all out?
Pardon me? We didn't take it all out. We left the
Got
first
it.
sentence. Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Hey, anything else? It's 1 minute of motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, so moved, seconded by Beth. All in favor, raise your hand. Thank you all. Good meeting. See you in